And then before Diana starts, Julie, if I could get you to speak to any Spanish speakers for me, please.
My pleasure. Muy buenas tardes y bienvenidos a este seminario web. Desafortunadamente tuvimos problemas técnicos y no podremos ofrecer servicios de interpretación al español en vivo. Sin embargo, vamos a grabar la sesión con traducción al español y esta se va a publicar en la página web de COPE y de la página de Facebook del Departamento de Emergencias en SOCO Emergency. Así es que estén al tanto y si pueden escribir su correo electrónico en el chat, le enviaremos el enlace para la grabación en español. Muchas gracias y disculpen la molestia. Back to you, Nancy.
Muchas gracias, Julie. And I will send it off to Diana, who is hosting our webinar this afternoon. Take it away, Diana.
Welcome everyone to COPE Northern Sonoma County's Shaking Together an Earthquake Ready webinar. COPE Northern Sonoma County is a nonprofit organization that provides emergency preparedness resources to residents. I am Diana Borges, one of the COPE board members and a geologist. Our speakers today will be Judith Zachariasen from the California Geological Survey, Dori Estrella from Sonoma County Energy and Sustainability, Dr. Nancy Brown from Sonoma County Department of Emergency Management, and myself. At the end of the presentation, we will answer questions that you posed during the registration, and then if you have any, you can put those into the Q&A, and we'll answer those after all of us presenters have spoken. And right now, I want to turn it over to Judith, who's going to tell us about earthquake risks and histories in Sonoma County.
Let me unmute myself and share my screen here. Okay. So my name's Judith Zachariasen, and I'm in the Seismic Hazards Program at the California Geological Survey. I'm going to talk today a little about the faults in earthquake history and hazards in Sonoma County. I will be sticking to the geology and leaving topics of earthquake preparedness or response to some of the other speakers. As people may know, California straddles a tectonic plate boundary between the North American and Pacific tectonic plates. The Pacific plate moves northwest relative to North America, as shown on this map by, is this working for you guys? Are you seeing this? Okay, sorry. Shown by the big blue arrows. So that's the big picture. The plate boundary, or part of it, runs through Sonoma County, and its presence creates earthquake hazard for the residents of the county. The plate boundary is reflected in a series of faults that accommodate the plate motion in Western California. Most of those plate boundary faults are part of the San Andreas fault system. So the San Andreas fault system faults, the ones in that system, do most of the work of the plate boundary. And these faults include the San Andreas, but also several other northwest oriented faults. So the big players in Sonoma County are the San Andreas fault here on the coast, which runs parallel to the coast from Bodega Bay to Wallala, on and offshore. Again, this is the dominant plate of the fault of the plate boundary, and it's the one that was responsible for the 1906 San Francisco earthquake. Sonoma County also includes a couple of other relatively large, fast-moving faults that also pose an earthquake hazard. The Rogers Creek-Healdsburg fault runs from San Pablo Bay through Rohnert Park, Santa Rosa, Healdsburg, and up towards Geyserville. Recent research on that on this fault indicates it might be connected to the Hayward fault, which runs through the East Bay, and connects with it in under San Pablo Bay. So a little bit farther east from the Rogers Creek Fault is the Mahakama Fault, which goes from sort of between St. Helena and Santa Rosa and extends north to Laytonville, passing through Ukiah and Willits. So those are the big players in the county. And the San Andreas, of course, is the big famous fault we all know about. But I would like to highlight the Rogers Creek Healdsburg Fault for a bit, as it runs through some of the larger population centers of Sonoma County, and it may pose the greater hazard to residents. The Rogers Creek Fault is a relatively fast-moving fault, which slips at about 1/4 to 1/2 inch a year, so could host earthquakes relatively frequently. The San Andreas, by contrast, slips about 2/3 to 1 inch per year and has significant earthquakes every few hundred years, sometimes faster in some parts. So the Rogers Creek Fault is getting a fair amount of new interest because its earthquake history is relatively poorly known, and because there's a lot of development and growth in Sonoma County, recognizing and understanding the hazard is becoming a priority. In addition, there's been new data available, this LIDAR data, which shows the topography really clearly, and it's allowed a much higher resolution mapping of the fault and identification of where it is. And you can see in the top right corner here is an oblique view of the LIDAR on top of a general aerial image. And those red lines are the newly mapped fault. Down in the bottom right, you can see a straight down view of the new mapping that's been done recently on this fault. And the main thing that's been learned from this new mapping is that the fault is quite a bit more complex and wider than had been previously understood, especially through Santa Rosa. It was previously mapped as a single trace. The new mapping is also triggering an updated fault evaluation and updated Alquist-Priolo fault zones. You can see the existing zone in the figure on the bottom right. The Alquist-Priolo zones are areas where development requires more detailed investigation of potential faulting. On the top left, you can see what's called a fault scarp in Santa Rosa. It's fairly subtle, but you can see this little change in slope in the road there. Another characteristic of the Rogers Creek Fault, you can also see out, not in the city, you can see a fault scarp here in the bottom left, that little hill, and the fault runs along the base of it. The other significant characteristic of the Rogers Creek Fault, which is also of the Mahakama Fault, is that these faults creep, which means that they slip along gradually instead of just slipping in big earthquakes. So this fault creeps anywhere between 0.1 to 1/4 inches per year, so it's a fair amount of the total slip. And so what it means is basically there's a mix of creep and gradual breaking of the ground surface and of earthquakes, which isn't uncommon. Move to the next slide. Okay, now I'm going to talk about some of the earthquakes that have happened in Sonoma County in the historical period. So this figure shows just general recorded seismicity with a couple specific earthquakes, the San Andreas Fault, of course, hosted the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, which is a magnitude 7.9, and went from San Juan Bautista to Cape Mendocino, which caused widespread shaking around Northern California. You can also see that since that earthquake, from in the picture, you don't see many dots near the San Andreas Fault. It hasn't had a lot of earthquakes, small earthquakes in between. The earthquakes that have been happening in the county are over on the other faults, the Rogers Creek Fault, the Mahakama Fault, and off in the northeast corner, the geysers. So some of the other significant faults earthquakes are in 1969, a pair of earthquakes in October happened right in Santa Rosa and caused damage there. There were also a pair of earthquakes in Santa Rosa in 2002, just last year. They were magnitude 4s and just produced some light shaking. So you can see that here. So here's just another reflection of that seismicity relative to these faults in the top right. But in the center here, this is a map of shaking intensity from the 2022 earthquakes, and it's pretty mild. So, whoops, sorry, didn't mean to go there. There are also some earthquakes in the late 19th century. They're not very well located, so they show up differently on different maps, but yeah, there's been a few in the magnitude 5 to 6 range. The geysers I mentioned up in the corner here, that is a fair amount. There's a lot of seismicity, but small earthquakes related to the geothermal field there. So here's just some of the damage that happened in a couple of those earthquakes. This is on the left, the San Francisco earthquake caused this damage in Santa Rosa. That's how much shaking. In the middle is this map of the shaking intensity from that earthquake. And you can see the red warm colors are more intense shaking, and you can see that it was sort of concentrated shaking near Santa Rosa from an earthquake on the San Andreas Fault. So sometimes geology does that, like the shaking isn't necessarily right where the fault is. On the right is a picture of damage from those 1969 magnitude 5 earthquakes. Those are relatively small earthquakes based on what we think about now, but you can see that they can cause damage. They're small, but they're close. So that's the kind of thing that can happen in one of those earthquakes. The next thing I want to talk about, we've been talking about what has happened, and now we're going to talk about what might happen in the future and what residents of Sonoma County should prepare for. This is where hazard assessment and earthquake forecasting come in, along with preparation and resiliency, which I'm not going to talk about, but I will discuss geologically what might happen. The first and most direct effect of an earthquake is ground shaking. And this figure shows a series of maps produced by the USGS that are called shake maps, and they show what might be the expected shaking from a scenario earthquake. And these are for 5 different scenario earthquakes that could produce shaking. And you can see the top left is the San Andreas full rupture. The bottom left is the Mahakama Fault. So that's a smaller earthquake than the San Andreas, but because of its location, it'll produce more shaking in Sonoma County. In the top right is the Rogers Creek Healdsburg Fault rupture. The next one, just to the down and to the left of that map, shows what shaking would be experienced in Sonoma County from an earthquake on the Hayward Fault. So the Hayward Fault isn't in Sonoma County itself, but it can cause shaking there. And then the one in the middle is this possibility of the Rogers Creek and the Hayward Fault being connected and rupturing in one large 7.5 magnitude earthquake. And you can see that the shaking would be quite intense. So my last slide on what to expect is what the direct geologic effects can be of an earthquake. As I said earlier, the most direct effect is ground shaking. This little video clip, you can see that, shows shaking from the 2019 Ridgecrest earthquake. So you can see that that's kind of a strong direct effect. Another effect is surface rupture, where you just tear the ground surface, and so that can damage structures that are located along the rupture. This is a picture from the 2019 Ridgecrest earthquake of the ground just being torn apart. Secondary earthquake effects include liquefaction, shown here with the car and this little water and sand from a New Zealand earthquake. There are also earthquake-induced landslides. You can see in the top right from a Japanese earthquake. And of course, along the coast, there's the potential to have tsunami. So in the bottom right. So those are the kinds of things that can happen in consequence of an earthquake. And this has just been a summary of that. And I will let the rest of the speakers discuss what we can do to address this earthquake hazard. Thanks. Yeah,
Thank you, Judith.
can you take over from me now? Because I don't seem to be able to get to turn it off myself. I don't know why not, but I've lost my controls.
Nancy, can you, there you go.
Thanks.
So I will continue from where Judith left off. So I will go into what some potential impacts are to humans, to our property and things like that. So as she said, you know, major shaking is going to cause damage, and it might damage our homes, businesses, bridges, overpasses, utility lines, down trees, and even more. I want to point out in the upper picture with the house, one thing that happens are those things that are not secured appropriately to a house, add-ons like some canopies, patio, overhangs, stairs like this. They're very vulnerable when the shaking comes because they're not attached properly. So they separate and they will collapse. Other things that could happen from earthquakes, our transportation routes could be blocked. The roads buckle, they crack like this one with the guy's head in it. Down trees, down power lines, just debris. So lots of things could happen to block our roadways. That in turn can delay our first responders. First responders can also be delayed or not able to get there because of just the massiveness of the disaster. They're just overwhelmed with responses that they're trying to do. Disruption of utilities. So utilities that are underground or above ground, both can be broken. And that includes all of our utilities, gas, septic, water, electric, so telephone. In the past, fires are sometimes common with the earthquakes because of propane and gas lines that are broken, other fuel lines that are broken, and then a spark and the fires start. During some of the earthquakes, actually fires have been more damaging than the actual earthquake. Our communication lines, the telephone lines, cell towers and things like that can be damaged. We know, obviously, you know, trapped people and casualties. are often, and then that leads to medical facilities being overloaded. So one of the critical things to know is when an earthquake hits, you really have seconds to respond. You don't have time to walk into the other room to check on someone, to check on your pets, to check on your children. You need to drop cover and hold on where you are right there. Walking during an earthquake actually is a potential for damaging, getting hurt yourself. You know, if you absolutely have to move somewhere and it's real heavy shaking, you might need to crawl because you can't even walk. Depending on where you are, you drop cover under a table, a desk, and you hold on to that table because you want to move with it. You want to stay under it. If you're in bed, you stay in bed and you cover your head. You can even curl up in a ball on your side to protect more. When you're driving and an earthquake hits, you pull over as soon as you can, put on your brake, and you stay there. And preferably don't pull over where there's anything that could fall on you under, stay away from bridges, overpasses, power lines. And the same thing goes if you're outside. You need to stay away from anything that might fall on you. So outside and also inside, if there's not a place for you to hide under, what you do is you sit on the ground, you cover your head. Inside the house, sit inside an interior wall and lean against it and cover your head up. Wheelchair, same type of thing. You put the brake on, cover your head. And when nothing else is possible, curl up, cover your head. So what we can do now, what I say is, the best thing to do is to get in the mindset to assess your house and your property for risks, no matter what the emergency you're trying to look at. So for earthquakes, it's things falling. What can damage you, your family, your pets? It's not just inside your house. So think where you might be, in your garage, outside, in your business. And practice the drop, cover, hold on. I strongly recommend that because for the longest time, I always knew I was going to get under my coffee table if I was in my living room. Well, it wasn't until I tried getting under my coffee table just as a practice. It's not as easy because it is low and I had to sneak around the legs. So it's not as fast as I wanted it to be. The other thing is keep a pair of sturdy shoes and a flashlight by your bed, because if an earthquake hits at night, you want to be able to put something on your feet that's going to protect you and have a flashlight to walk around to check, make sure that you're protecting yourself from any debris that might be there. Store breakable objects, heavy object chemicals on either the floor or low shelves instead of up high. So if they fall, there's the chance of less damage. And consider retrofitting your house, especially the brick chimneys that are very vulnerable. And Dori will later talk about retrofitting options. And like I said, you need to look at what might fall inside the house or outside and secure them. Any large items, bookcases, TV stands, the television, dressers, your appliances. What you want to do is secure them to the wall, but you need to secure them, attach them to a stud in the wall and not just the drywall. Cabinet doors, you can secure them so that they don't fly open and everything inside falls out. Anything on the wall, paintings, wall decorations, secure those. And check to see if there's anything above your bed that might fall on your head if the earthquake happens. And as we all know, we need to secure our water heater just in case of an earthquake, but it's a good practice just to have our water heater secured anyway. So after all of the shaking stops, you need to expect aftershocks because they are common. And every time additional shaking starts, you need to drop, cover, and hold on. When the shaking stops, check around your house, the office, make sure your family, your pets are okay, and then check on your neighbors to see how they're doing, because you're there to help each other. Wear gloves and sturdy shoes. You can see in the picture down at the bottom, there's a lot of debris. In the Napa earthquake that happened a few years ago, most of the harm that came to the people over there was because they didn't wear gloves and shoes, and they were cut on glass that had fallen on the floor and elsewhere. Like any emergency that happens, keep up on what's happening in the conditions, emergency alerts, and tune into the radio stations. If you smell gas or you think it might be leaking, shut it off. But you don't necessarily shut off your gas just because an earthquake happens. It's because you suspect something. And if your gas, you do shut your gas off, you need to have a professional turn it back on just for safety. Know that things are going to shift around in your cabinet. So when you open those up, do it cautiously and be ready in case something falls out. And because of possible electrical problems, use stairs and not the elevator. So I want to share with you some products that you might want to consider. And these are not the only products out there. And I'm not saying that these will work for you, but these are ideas to give you. I've gone through several things when I was reducing risk in my own house. And these are to give you an idea to help you start thinking of different ways and to get creative. So the first three images are ways to secure large items. It's bolting to the studs in the wall. The one is you can use Velcro as opposed to metal and wire. You can also there are straps to secure your television. These are different ways that you can secure your cabinets. The one with the gray can also be used on your refrigerator. Like I said, there are a lot of options out there, and even some of the child-proofing ways might work. What you need to do, though, is assess what your potential is. Is there a large item in the back inside that might be pushing against your cabinet? So you're going to need something very sturdy in that case. Do you have liquids that might spill in there and flow out? I can tell you that it also depends, right now, it's what kind of handles you have. Certain devices work for the knobs, but they won't work on the regular handles. The top left is one that I have on some of mine. It's basically zip ties with a clasp in the middle, which works very well. But I found out after putting it is because my handles are so close, it really doesn't close all the way. I mean, it works for some of what I have. So that's an example of, you really need to evaluate your specific condition and decide what's going to work for you. So in addition to the walls, I mean, a lot of us have things on top of our cabinets, on top of dressers, on top of things like that. So this quake hold putty is very good to use to secure it down. I wouldn't say that in an extremely large earthquake that I have confidence that it's going to stay there, but it does. It stays very well. Quake hold also has some other different products that you could take a look at. And the right is just it's in my house, and to show you that those type of things, you want to use the quake hold because that's glass. It's going to fall on the ground, it's going to break, and those vases actually could put a dent in the floor even. The bottom right is a product that you can buy. It's basically bungee cord like, but you can actually buy that to help secure things on shelves. On the left is a gas shutoff valve. This is one that, you know, you can get it on Amazon for about $20. It's a multi-use tool. It can be used to shut off your water, your gas. You can dig with it. There's a lot of different things, but you can even buy one for about $5 at Home Depot that is just specifically a gas shut-off valve, if that's what you want. And you make sure that that is near your gas line, so you can shut off. Very handy if you need. So before I went through my house and earthquake proofed as much as you can, I knew that my garage and my shed were a disaster just waiting. In my shed, what I did, I attached my tools with these clasps that are very strong. You actually have to move the lever to the right to pull them out. You can't just pull them out. So instead of stacking everything in a corner that we're going to go wherever, now they're secured a little more. My bench in my garage, I put on the board, screwed a board ledge across the bottom to help secure that, and put a bungee cord in there to keep all those items inside. The one on the right is just to show strapping your water heater in. And like I said, you know, you need to have it secured to studs. So if where you want to attach your strap, if the stud's not there, you put a board across attached to the stud, and then you can attach things to that board to hold it in. Many of us have overhead storage in our garage. You can put bungee cords around to hold that in. Since my water heater was off to the left there, I also screwed in a board ledge to keep the items there better secured. Down at the left bottom, the pegboard. I had a lot of tools there, which were going to be a projectile right onto my car. I did not find anything that I felt comfortable enough to hold my tools there. So what I did, I got a basket and I screwed it into the top of the bench, and I now use it to store some of the items that were up on my pegboard. Over to the right are, shelving. We need to secure those too. There are ways you can do that. You can buy items. I just used a ratchet strap there and just strap the whole thing, and then bungee cord each shelf so everything stays in. So one thing I suggest is just getting creative with bungee cords and heavy duty Velcro. They really come in handy. The bungee cord, using it for keeping my ladder in my shed upright. The left one, there's actually those Velcro straps that come with a hook already. So you just put a eye hook into the stud, attach that, and like I have the bike attached, or you can attach anything like that. On the bottom, the tree trimmer doesn't fit anywhere, so I put several Velcro straps to hold that up there. And these are some resources that you can go to. I'm not going to go into it, but these actually are on SoCo Emergency's website, and Nancy will mention those later. So emergency preparedness sometimes can be a little overwhelming, especially when you first get started, but you really don't have to do it alone. After our Q&A period, Priscilla Abercrombie, our chairperson, is going to talk about how you and your neighbors can get prepared together. So I will now turn this over to Dori.
All right, great. Let me see if I can get my screen shared here. Can you see my screen? All right, great. Thanks, Diana, and thanks, Judith. There's some great information here today. I'm excited to be part of this lineup. So my name is Dori Estrella. I'm with the Climate Action and Resiliency Division. I manage our education and outreach. I'm going to talk a little bit about being prepared at home and earthquake retrofitting. So a lot of people think, you might be thinking, hey, what does climate have to do with earthquakes? Well, one of the things we do here is we focus on buildings and behaviors. Originally, that started around energy and water. And we included construction hardening, which also includes wildfire safety and seismic strengthening into some of the work that we're doing here around resiliency. So we talked a little bit about this. I'm not going to really spend too much time on that. As you know, we are prone to that, to earthquakes here. So it's just a matter of when. So I'm going to talk a little bit about resources that are available to retrofit your home. I'm going to talk a little bit about different candidates for housing that make it prime for needing those retrofits, and then some incentives and some financing that'll help with that. So the state of California came out with this great homeowner's guide to earthquake safety, really comprehensive, great information. I do have a slide later on with resources, and I'll have a link to that. But one of the great things in here is a checklist. So you can use this checklist. It has some of those easier things that you want to do, like Diana talked about, securing those items in your garages, but also some of the bigger things around your foundation in your home. So it's a nice way to go through and have a checklist and have something in your hand to look at. It's a great guide overall to get, kind of check out your house and see how you're doing. So when we talk about retrofitting, good candidates for those are homes built before 1980 with a raised floor or crawl space, or like Diana mentioned, unreinforced masonry chimneys. I have a slide that'll show that in just a bit. So those are the prime candidates for looking at making those retrofitting projects. So a big one is brace and bolt. This is probably the most common. The first picture on the left, it's a wood frame home that sits directly on a foundation. So it requires a bolt only retrofit, so not too intensive. And then you'll see on the right, that's one with the metal foundation plates, bolting it to the perimeter of the foundation and securing it. So that's one of the easier retrofits that you can do. There's the cripple wall house. So if you have a crawl space with an unbraced walls, that crawl space or cripple walls could collapse during an earthquake. So there's ways that you can shore that up, adequate bracing that you can do. So here's another brace and bolt retrofit. So the picture on the left shows you the wood frame house that sits directly on the foundation. So it requires that brace and bolt retrofit. So this is a little more involved than the one that we looked at previously with just the plates. This requires putting in that plywood sheet and then bolting to the foundation. So to make it more secure. There is the posted pier house. I think we see a lot of these out towards the river. The houses that are elevated, so making sure you have adequate bracing. If it's a large home, it sits on these wood posts, they're unconnected to the concrete piers. It can happen during that shifting. So really important to address that type of thing. And the soft story house. The soft story house is maybe you have a room that sits above a garage, so it's not really braced properly. It doesn't have the standard support. Those walls could collapse during a major shaking or cause serious damage. So that's something to address. Many times with these types of the post and pier, soft story houses, those are more involved retrofits that you'll have to work with an engineer and an architect and that type. And so the masonry chimneys, that's a big area too. So if you still have a chimney in your home, and you can add layers of plywood. So in the shaking event, that whole chimney, as you can see in the image that I'm showing you on the left, can fall right into the home. It could fall outside, as you see in the bottom, and just crumble. So there's different ways that you can address that, adding layers of plywood around the roof and the chimney. You can remove the upper part of the chimney, add some other types of bracing. So again, really important and to address that, because that's a common area that'll happen when the shaking occurs. One of the programs that can help, so we can move into a little bit of where programs that can help. The state of California also has an earthquake brace and bolt program. While it's currently not open right now, they open, traditionally they've been opening for a 30-day period once per year. It's a $3,000 grant to eligible zip codes around California that can help you make some of these earthquake retrofits. I encourage you, if you are interested or maybe your home has been in one of these areas or has some of these features that we talked about today, to apply for this grant when it becomes available. You can sign up to get notified when the registration opens. It's so popular. There's a lottery system. So the ones get selected, they'll also have a wait list. So if people drop out of the program, then the people on the wait list get on. But that, again, that doesn't open. It's once per year that opens. But again, you could find the information on their website, and I'll have the resources there. So earthquakebracebolt.com. The Association of Bay Area Governments, or ABAG, has a housing resilience resource. They have a whole page on seismic strengthening that has a lot of great information about retrofits and different programs that can help you learn more about that. California Earthquake Authority has a great document, Prepare Your House in an Earthquake Risk, and that guide that we looked at to begin with that has that checklist. So those will all come to you in a copy of the slide. So don't furiously try to write those down. It's a lot. Oh, you ready? So one of the other programs, our county is very unique. It has the PACE financing program, which allows, it started in 2009, originally to address greenhouse gas emissions. So we allowed property owners to finance energy and water saving improvements on their property tax bill, and as a way of reducing greenhouse gases. And in 2019, we expanded that to include seismic strengthening and wildfire safety improvements. So things like a roof, those bolt and brace projects, the chimney projects, those types of things. You can even use it for the engineering fees. So this is a really great way to make those improvements. It's paid back. It makes it affordable. The paid backs is over 10 or 20 years. It's your choice. It's a low fixed interest rate, and it's paid back through the county tax bill system. So when I say it's property assessed clean energy, that means it's not actual personal debt. It's on the property. So you're paying for it with your, it's an additional tax assessment. So there's no income or credit qualifying. It's all based on your property value, and you need to be current on your mortgage and property taxes. So here's an example of some of the improvements that we do. Roofing, gutters, things like solar is really popular, new HVAC systems, but really importantly, what we're talking about today, all of those seismic strengthening measures, including direct and indirect costs. So things like the engineering and materials and that type of thing. So if you want to get started, you can go or learn more. You can go to our website at sonomacountyenergy.org/financing. We have a pre-qualification, or you can skip that and start right with your application. We have a list of participating contractors. So if you're interested, go there and find out all about it. One of the other things that I'll talk about last is consultations. We do better building consultations for solar and financing. So we have people in our office that do the consultations. They're industry experts that can sit down with you and talk to you about your home in particular. While we can't refer you to any contractors, we don't do your calculations for your what you need, but we can talk to you about the different improvements that you can make and the options that are available for your home. We can help you, if you've talked to a few contractors, we can help you do some bid comparisons. We're seeing that a lot with the solar consultations, but also with the better building consultations. So great service, no charge. I encourage you to take advantage of it. So here's our contact information. I know I rushed through a lot of that information. I actually, while we were going, I added in a few extra slides, so I apologize to the group. but I wanted to be able to touch on some of those retrofitting ideas. So with that, I will pass it back over to Nancy.
Thank you so much, Dori. I really appreciate all the information everybody's given so far. It's been really amazing. My part here is relatively small. I'm going to talk about our shelter in place kit, which is something that's a little bit different than those of us who have been spending time getting ready for wildfire. So if you've been getting ready for wildfire, you have spent your time making sure you have a go bag. So you have 3 days worth of supplies that you can grab and take with you in a hurry, which is super awesome. There's a little bit of difference here when we're talking about earthquakes, and the difference really stems from what might happen. So in an earthquake, it's very likely, especially if it's a very large earthquake, that there'll be some infrastructure issues. So it's going to take a while for the roads and the bridges and all of these different infrastructure things to be inspected. And so we're going to ask people to stay at their home while these things happen. So that could be a week, that could be even longer. So when we talk about a shelter in place kit, we're asking that you keep at least 7 days worth of supplies of food and water, necessary medication, all of those things in your home. So that sounds like a lot. Some people, if you have the resources and the space, it's great to gather these supplies for yourself all in one location to make it easy to get to them. For others, if you don't have a lot of space, what we really would like to suggest is this concept of having a very deep pantry. So when we talk about the amount of food in our cupboard, and so one thing I'd like you to do, Diana mentioned one thing, which is go home and look over your bed and see what's there that might fall and hurt you and get rid of it tonight. Pull it down, set it on the side. The second thing is go take a look in your pantry and see if you had to stay home right now for 7 days, what would happen? Keep in mind, you might not be able to use your stove and oven. You might not have electricity. So keep those things in mind as well. What would happen? Do you have enough on hand right now? And if you don't, little by little over the next couple of weeks, start adding a few more items. So it can be an economic burden if you have to like go buy all this at once. But what I would rather suggest is next time you go to the grocery store, add some dry goods to your cart. Just, a couple of extra things, maybe some dried cereal, maybe some canned fruit, just a few things each week. And pretty soon you'll have a pretty good supply of food for yourself at home. We also want to make sure that you have plenty of water. Now, we all have a great water source in our hot water heater. So your hot water heater has gallons and gallons and gallons of water, but we still want to make sure that you have a good supply of drinking water on hand. You can do that with those big 1 gallon jugs. Just stack some of those in your garage so you have enough water for drinking over that period of time. Make sure that you change that stuff as well as your food out on a regular basis. So I like you to think about, when we change the hands on our clock in spring and fall, go ahead and check your supplies and make sure all of that's fresh and delicious as well, because you really want to make sure that you have what you need on hand to be able to shelter in place. And then, of course, don't forget your life-saving medications. Make sure you have at least a week's worth. In an earthquake, your local pharmacist may well not be open for a period of time, and that's a bunch of different reasons. Sometimes it's because the pharmacist isn't able to get to work. Sometimes it's because the business isn't sure if their building's secure. There's a lot of different reasons. You need to give all of these different things that are around us a little bit of grace for a few days, which means you need to make sure you're ready to take care of yourself and your loved ones at home for at least a week. If you live out in the boonies far, far away, I'd like to see you look at a couple weeks even. So think about these things and what you can do. When you get off our webinar tonight, please go look above your bed and go take a look in your cupboard and see what you have in there. Next, I'm going to introduce Priscilla Abercrombie, who is going to talk about COPE Northern Sonoma County.
Great. Thank you, Nancy. What a great webinar. Lots of great information. We at COPE are very excited to share this kind of information with our communities. So thank you. And Nancy's got a couple of slides that I'm going to run through real quickly. For those of you that are not familiar with us, COPE stands for Communities Organized to Prepare for Emergencies. Go ahead, Nancy. I am the board chair for our nonprofit. Our mission really is to help residents, families, and visitors, neighbors become and remain better prepared for all kinds of emergencies not only fire, which we focused on a great deal lately, but earthquakes, floods, etc. And you have seen that we've been doing webinars and providing information in other areas as well. Our vision is that if we all work together, we can get through these emergencies when they happen. We have communities all over northern Sonoma County. We have about 45 communities now. If you're out there and not sure if you live in a COPE community, there's a map. This map is on our website. Take a look at it. There's also a list of communities on the website. Next one, Nance. We are in collaboration with our various first responders, both fire agencies, as well as law enforcement. And we all work together to try to make our communities safer. We have community leaders that represent various areas throughout northern Sonoma County. And within those communities, there are many different neighborhoods oftentimes. And so we have neighborhood leaders as well that represent residents within those neighborhoods. Nancy, next. We have a board of directors. All of us work together as a team to try to provide information to our community and support our COPE leaders. Next. We do three primary things. We prepare, educate, and assist. Nancy, next slide. We, for those of you interested in being a COPE leader, we provide monthly COPE leadership meetings. We do this in conjunction with our local fire agencies, our local government, the Department of Emergency Management, as well as other nonprofits. We provide our leaders with a toolkit that we have put together recently to, again, support our leaders in being able to do their volunteer work in their communities. And we provide disaster preparedness education. We have a smoke ready program. And as you know, we do our webinars. We have provided funding to many different COPE communities to do fuels mitigation and evacuation preparedness. And we have a great deal of expertise in working with older adults. So we focus on supporting our older adults in our communities. Nance? So if you don't know if you have a COPE community in your area, please look on the website, see if you are on that map. If not, look at the role of neighborhoods, the communities actually on our website. And we can connect you with your community leader if you indeed do have a COPE community in your area. Every neighborhood needs about 1 to 2 leaders, and we could use you. If you're not active yet in our COPE communities, we'd love to see you get started. So, and we are here to help. We have a meeting once a month to help new communities get started. Nancy, next. You can find us on social media. We have a very active YouTube channel. In fact, Diana will be posting this video there. And my understanding is we'll have that in Spanish translation when we do post it, which will be great. We're doing our best to try to reach everyone in our community. And we're really grateful for the support of the Department of Emergency Management that helps make that happen. Follow us on Facebook as well. We are providing information continuously there as well. Next. And in July, I'm not sure if we will still be having the webinar on ember resistant structures, but I'm sure that we'll be having a webinar this summer. So keep track again of what we're up to on Facebook and through our newsletter. We have a newsletter we send out monthly, and if you're interested in getting that, just go to the website and sign up for the newsletter. We'd love to have you be a part of our community. So again, if you're interested in getting started with COPE, please come to an online intro meeting. You can register at our website and also register for the newsletter there. Thank you.
Thank you, Priscilla. Diana, back to you.
Thank you, everyone, for your presentations. It was very helpful. Right now, we are going to go into the questions. I have questions that you submitted when you registered, and if you have any questions, please post it down into the Q&A at the bottom. The first question is, do cracks on the roads indicate fault line areas? Does clay soil liquefy in an earthquake? So, Judith?
The cracks in the road can indicate that. I showed a picture of the cracks across the road due to creep along the Rogers Creek Fault. And so that was an indicator, but not every crack in the road is going to indicate a fault. As for clay soil is considered to be non-liquefiable, and it's generally loose, granular, and saturated materials that liquefy. So that's sand and silt, and sometimes fine gravels that can liquefy, but not clay.
Thank you. Is there free first aid emergency training for seniors?
I'll be happy to take that one. Currently, we do not, to my knowledge, although Red Cross does offer first aid training from time to time. We are going to be offering an opportunity for different neighborhood leaders to bring first aid into their community if they'd like to, coming up this summer on a limited quantity. And then also we are going to be promoting, and in Northern Sonoma County, you already have an amazing CERT team. And through CERT training, you do get some great first aid training, and CERT training is free.
How would you teach children what I learned today in this training?
I can start with, this is really, it's actually really cool information for kids, because kids that understand what can happen are often not afraid of it. It's the big mystery question mark that makes children afraid. But discussing with them ways that they can stay safe as opposed to ways that they can get hurt. So that's two different ways to talk about the same subject. And one of these ways empowers them. The other way is not designed to empower them. And that's really everybody education, is explaining to people what you can do to stay safe as opposed to what might kill you. So it's, you know, a different way to talk about it. And I think children in particular are really, really good at understanding that they can do things that make a difference. And when you explain to them, you know, just simple things about drop, cover, and hold, things that they can affect, you'll get a really good response out of them. And then when they get in an earthquake, they won't be so scared that they'll be, you know, really debilitated. Their mental recovery will be quicker because they understood what might happen, they understood what to do, and they understand what's going to happen next.
Thanks, Nancy. If you're hiking in a forest when a major quake strikes, should you drop, cover, or stay alert to your surroundings in case you need to dodge a falling tree? And I would say you still drop, cover, cover your head, the whole thing. But if you are near something that looks like it's going to fall, I would try to crawl away if you can. So you can do a quick assessment there. Is it safer to find the triangle of life to hide under rather than under a table? And the answer is not in the United States. In some countries, there, yes, it is. Next question is, what do you do if you live in a motorhome and there is an earthquake? What types of structures are most at risk in a large quake?
So motorhome wise, a motorhome is like being in a car. You're still going to try to get under that table that's in your motorhome and stay safe. Motorhomes are pretty cool because all the doors and cabinets have latches, so all your stuff doesn't fly out when you're driving around. So that's pretty good there. But you do want to stay where you are, not go outside. and drop cover and hold it within the motorhome. Obviously, if you're driving it, you need to pull off to the side of the road as soon as you can. And that will not come as a surprise to you because it will feel like you got a flat tire when your car starts shaking and you're driving in an earthquake. So you'll want to pull over.
What is the most important alert program to be signed up for in our area?
I'll take that too. We really only have one alert program, and that is SoCo Alert that you have to sign up for. So you can do that at socoemergency.org. You can sign up for SoCo Alert. That's the county alert program. We do have Nixle that many of our law enforcement partners use. That's not really considered an alert program. That's considered an informational program. And then, of course, we use the wireless emergency alert system, the emergency alert system, and both of those, you do not have to sign up for those. I just wanted to let anybody who is on right now know that we're going to go ahead and do whatever questions Diana has, but it is 6 o'clock. So please feel free if you need to go on. We will be publicizing the link to this so you can catch the last few questions later, but we don't want to hold you hostage.
The next question is what to do if I have pets, and I'll answer that one. So with pets and also with your children, you know, your safety comes first. If you aren't safe and after the quake able to help them, then it's going to defeat your purpose. So you need to protect yourself first. For pets, you know, our pets are often more sensitive to the shaking than we are. So you might notice that they actually might start running around freaking a little bit before you even know that it's happening. And they may actually just automatically go hide somewhere. When the earthquakes hit, you know, don't try to restrain your pets by holding them. Let them go and do their thing. The other thing is part of your shelter process is prepare for your animals. So you need to make sure, you know, you have stay crates and other supplies that'll last your week, or however long you are preparing for yourself, you need to have it for your pets and other animals. We work with Halter Project, and if you go to their website, halterproject.org, they have a lot of information on pets and animals that can help you with that. Are there any questions in? No. So Julie posted about going to their website. And I think that's it on our question and answer. So I want to thank you everyone who stayed and joined us and with our new link. We apologize for that. And we hope to see you in July when we do our next webinar, which is going to be relating to wildfire. So thank you, everyone, and take care. Good night.